Hey everybody, I'm Matthew Morris, and today we're going to be talking about some long exposure photography. Now, we all know everything's going on with the global pandemic, so I'm not out like shooting subways and getting on buses and stuff like that right now. Instead, I'm trying to be safe, probably just like you guys are too, and I'm trying to find some different types of photography that will work with that and things that I don't really know a lot about, but I'd like to learn more, and long exposure photography is one of those things. Now, for me, I've been using my Hasselblad X1D 50C to take these pictures. Now, I have two lenses. This 45mm f4 lens is here, which is the equivalent of 35mm on a full frame camera. And then I have this lens here, which is the 80mm HC lens. So this is meant for the H series bodies, and I have this adapter on it. So at 80 millimeters, I think it's about 63 millimeters equivalent on the sensor for this Hasselblad X1D2. Now, one of the first things you need when you go out and do any type of long exposure photography is a tripod. Now, right now I'm filming myself on an X-T4 with a really large Manfrotto tripod, and it's heavy, with a big video head, and that's not probably the type of tripod you want to take. Instead, you probably want to use something more like this. This is the Manfrotto Be Free tripod. It's portable. It folds up really nicely like this. I have two heads for it. This is the photography head, which is a ball head up here on the top, and it can twist and turn. It can put the camera portrait or landscape, and it moves right here, right? You just unlock it, and it can tilt down. Now, one of the things when you're looking for a tripod is weight. Now, these portable tripods here, they don't weigh much, but right here, it's got a hook, and this hook, I can take the backpack that I'm with, that's on my back, take the handle on the top, and then put that handle here and add weight to the tripod. So whatever I'm carrying with me to the location can help me steady the tripod, especially if there's some wind or anything else that, well, mainly wind, that's going to cause a tripod to move. So number one, you're gonna need a tripod. Now, the next thing you're gonna want is a remote trigger, because you've got this camera or some other camera, and you've got this on top of your tripod. And the whole idea of long exposure photography is the camera doesn't move. The sensor is exposed to the light. The camera processes the image, and there you have your long exposure image. So on the Hasselblad, it's got this really fancy, kind of neat remote trigger. It's got a button that matches the button on the Hasselblad really nicely. And then it's got this little end here, like a microphone jack, plugs in, and I can remote trigger the camera by pressing the button. Or this is what I use for my Fuji cameras. This screws in, and I press this little button, and that comes out, and that activates the shutter in the camera for the long exposure, or any type of exposure. Now, if you don't have something like this, you can always use a timer, but a timer is not the best thing to help you if you're trying to time something happening. Like, for instance, one of the photos I'm going to show you, which I'll show you right now, there is a boat coming into the scene on this river in Savannah, and I wanted the streaks of the light from the boat. All right, so that's tripod, remote trigger. Now you need some filters. Now, I don't have any super special filters right now. I wish I did. I just have my video filters that I've used for years. It's got different stops on it, and as you turn it, the amount of light that it allows through changes. These are great because you slap them on real quick, screw them into the front of the lens, and you immediately have a neutral density filter that has multiple different stops on it. Now, this is what a more professional photography filter kit would look like. Now, you can take your camera and put the f-stop to the maximum amount, the highest number. And on this lens, f22. So I can go all the way up to f22 on this lens. All right, let's see what we can get on this lens. Yep, this goes up to f32. That's pretty high. So you can really cut out the light that's coming through the lens into the sensor. Now let's talk about actually taking the photo. So you found the location, you've got your tripod, you've got a trigger on it, you've got a neutral density filter, but you can't see anything. That's definitely something that can happen. So sometimes what you need to do is not have your filters on, find the scene, and then manually focus it. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's get into Phocus and take a look at some of the photographs I've taken recently. All right, for those of you who haven't seen this before, this is Hasselblad's Phocus software. I have some pictures up here, and I've kind of oriented my pictures on the bottom, navigating through the computer. On the right, all of my panels, very much like Lightroom. So this is the first photo I wanted to show you, and this is taken with the Hasselblad, the 45p lens at f10 for 8 seconds at ISO 100. Now, as you can see, the water here is pretty smooth. This photo was taken at the Gulf of Mexico. We were staying at a friend's house, just us, and they've got no neighbors, which is great. We got some different angles, as you can see here, and I took pictures at different lengths of time. So this is, 8 seconds. So you still get some texture in the water. It's not completely smooth, but it really starts smoothing out. This photo was at 10 seconds. Now this one was at 25 seconds long, and you can really see the water is super smooth here. You can also see that the wind was blowing and the grass was moving as well. This photo is at 25 seconds, and this one here is at 16. Let's get into these actual photos inside of Phocus too, to kind of show you what I did. So I'm clicking on this little, the crop button here. And as you can see, I was off a little bit. You can see that there's an outline of what the original photo was, and I've cropped in and I've re-leveled it to the horizon. When you're using Phocus to level something, there's this little tool right here, and it's so cool. You just click and hold, drag. I want to be level against whatever I just dragged out to be. Now, if you've ever used Lightroom before, or Capture One, you can do layers and all those fun things. And Phocus has layers too. We got the histogram up here. We have our exposure controls, white balance, sharpness, and then you have adjustment layers. So let me shut these off. And you'll notice up here, it's a little dark and it's a little dark here. And that's because when I took this photo, I actually screwed up. And I screwed up because the filter for the neutral density filter itself, I had somehow slipped past the maximum point, and that caused those dark marks to happen. Now, I was able to correct them inside of here a bit, at least I think so. So when I first got this photo, here's what it looks like. I got the exposures. I can shut exposure off, so that's what the photo looked like. Without the curves and exposure, that's what it looks like straight out of camera. I played the exposure a little bit. I played the curves. And then it was time to start doing some additional work. So first, I created a mask with a gradient to help pull out the sky. And here's my gradient. So once I did that, I wanted to try to clean up this upper left-hand corner. And so there, I created a gradient for that corner. I did the same thing in the lower right-hand corner. And then this layer 4, I did even a larger one to try to fade that change in. And I think the photo looks pretty cool. I really like the shot. But let's take a look at the photo. So we are at 34%. Let's punch in at 100%. That's 100% right there. That is awesome. I mean, look at the detail. You can see the grain in the wood. This shot, I have some more work to do, But I really like how this composition came out. I love that these posts are right here, and we're just looking down this center of what was left of this deck that, or walkway or dock that is, that was damaged from a hurricane or a storm. This is a longer exposure, 25 seconds, and the water is really smoothed out. If we zoom in on this one, you can see the grain in the wood all the way down. It's just amazing. Now here I've got 2 adjustment layers. I'm going to shut the exposure off, shut all my work on curves, and that's what the photo looked like straight out of camera. Now, if you were doing something that was using a more professional filter kit, you may want to use a gradient filter here. I don't own one of those yet, and that gradient filter would be up on the sky, and you would position your filter just like I'm doing the gradient here in the adjustment layer, so that it ends, or it transitions from the gradient into the water. But that just shows you, how much dynamic range this camera has in this large 50 megapixel medium format size sensor. Now I had to go down to Savannah, and late at night I went down to take pictures of the city, and these are the ones I want to show you. Now this one, these exposure times are much greater. This is the 45p lens again, 1 minute and 42 seconds. Now let's take this image back. And this is what the image looked like straight out of camera. It looked good in the back of the screen of the Hasselblad, but it needed a little bit of work. I started the exposure, curves. Now again, I zoomed in here at 100%, and look at the detail. This is 35 millimeter in the middle of the river. Look at the detail here. Wait till you see the 80 millimeter photos. And you can see how smooth the water is at 1 minute 42 seconds. So I like this photo. It's not the best one, but I like it. Now this shot here was taken with the 80 millimeter lens f/16, 31 seconds long. We're gonna punch in, and here you can see this door. You can see where how the door is divided in the glass. You can see that right here is where the fire hose is for this deck. Kind of changed my composition up a little bit, changed the crop, but this is the picture I really love from this shot. All right, so that's how it came straight out of camera. It looks good. There's a lot of data in there to play with. So here's my corrections on exposure. Had a couple of dust removal spots here. Started playing with the color correction a little bit, adjusted the curves a little bit, and that is what my final shot was for this one. This one I really love. 3 minutes and 23 second long exposure. But I really dig this photo. I love the colors, the beams of the light shooting up from these smokestacks or whatever they are. So anyways, that's it. I hope you guys have liked this. I hope it's maybe something you'd be interested in doing. I know I didn't really get deep into Phocus. I have to do a video like that, and I will. I wanted to learn more about Phocus, getting into these adjustment layers, learning how they work as opposed to the adjustment layers I'm used to in Lightroom or anything else has been really big in understanding all these controls, the little tweaks here and there are different inside of Phocus versus Lightroom or Capture One or anything else like that. One of the really cool things though in Phocus, at least I think so, is that Hasselblad's file system and the way they store all the edits that you're doing is very different. All these edits are actually stored in the file itself, just like a Photoshop file. It's a standalone file. Their files are standalone too. So they take the raw, they convert that into a file, and that, I think it's the 3FR is their raw, and then these are, I don't know, they're FFF or something like that. And then all of this data is inside of here. So I can take this file and put it on their computer. I can put it on a drive, whatever it is, open it up on Phocus on another computer, and pop, the file comes up with all the work I've ever done on it, and all the history that was done as well. And it's all non-destructive, which is great. So anyways, that's it. I hope you dug this. Do you do any long exposure photography? What type of photography have you been doing during this global pandemic to go out and still make photos and have fun with your equipment, but not, in a safe way? What have you guys been doing? I want to know. Leave that in the comments below. I'm curious. That's pretty much it. Like, share, and subscribe, and go out and make life an adventure.